popping all that bullshit. I be seeing you, Jimmy, talking about we Gucci boo boo here in the Gucci store. Talking about we Gucci boo boo. The Black King was going up. Jimmy like, Marita Moneda. Coca-Cola.
It sounds like he want to do one with 50 Cent. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like Jim.
Nah, I don't want to do nothing with that sucker. You heard? You need to leave him out of the conversation.
Jim Jones. Who is Jim Jones? Like, he's not on anyone's top 10 list. He's not like no one's top 10 list. Maybe not even his family.
When Jay did the remix, it was the biggest alley-oop he could do for me. I understood a lot about music, and at that time, people were looking at the wrong way, and I was looking at the right way.
50 Cent just destroyed Jim Jones for making fun of Nas. He also shared this rare footage showing how Jim betrayed Jay-Z by pleading for a Roc Nation deal. After referring to Jay as soft,
If I told you I was in the Roc Nation office, how would you feel about that? Huh? You think I was lying? That's clear enough for you?
although he respects Nas, 50 has never been a fan of Jim or Jay, as you all probably know. When Jim recently started bragging about how much better he was than Nas, and how he had restored Nas' popularity, 50 took it personally. For Nas, I most likely did something he had never done before. That is the most viral thing he has ever done. Never. Furthermore, 50 just exposed more than simply Jim's disdain for Nas. It has to do with Jim's long history of acting like a snake and betraying people. Jim has been flipping the story for years by switching between pleading and beef, disdain and submission. Especially with reference to Jay-Z, this is a problem for over a decade. Jim ridiculed Jay. He even slapped an executive of Jay's. But when Jim needed a deal, he crawled back to Jay-Z, calling him a hero and begging to be signed. 50 is already utilizing this chance to reveal Jim's true identity to everyone. A man who lacks loyalty, a true position, and respect for the culture he claims to represent. However, that is just the beginning. There's a whole tale here about how Jim's hatred of Nas backfired so badly that people like 50 were able to dig into Jim's past and expose everything. Let's look at Jim's shift from mocking Jay to demonstrating compassion.
Certain people shouldn't be able to say your name until they've done something in the genre of music. I've done too much in this music to even have to answer that question. Like Jim Jones, who is Jim Jones?
50 Cent is not hesitant to expose Tasana's players, as everyone is aware. His recent comments about Jim Jones being Jay-Z's lapdog after Jim disrespected Nas also highlighted Jim's tendency to change his mind. In case you missed it, Jim claimed to be better than Nas. He even got into a heated argument with Shannon Sharp, claiming that he could outperform Nas in the booth.
Way more influential than Nas, and I don't care what nobody say. I know I made a little boo-boo when we talk about the sales and all this type. I don't feel like getting into that rhetoric about where I started and where he started.
You said that.
But listen, Nas was nice when I was in high school. When I was in 10th grade, Nas came out. Nas was dope. We appreciate him. He had a little bit run. But Nas always came up second to Jay and DMX and all these other people.
But lyrically, I'm gonna keep it a stack with you.
Yeah,
y'all
but look how you
with
dress.
Nas.
Look how you dress. You don't even be in the same places I be in. And the
But
things
I-
that we, listen to
I
me,
can be in the church house. You can't definitely Nas lyrics. I don't know who told you that. Now look, I know you on that good stuff, but you're not seeing Nas. You're not seeing Nas, bro. Let's be real.
You got a bunch of 40 and 50-year-olds in their panties because I said I'm better than Nas.
It don't matter.
Look at you.
Hey,
I will run circles around Nas rapping right. I will run circles around Nas rapping right now. Right now, I will run Saturn around Nas right now rapping. Everybody knows.
Although other rappers chastised Jim for being too kind, Jim stepped up and boasted about making Nas relevant again for the first time since Nas's feud with Jay-Z.
Ever, he's never been talked about like this ever in his life.
Now, has Nas
You did the last time he was in some this when people were comparing when him and Jay was beating on him. You heard?
As you are now aware, Jim brought up the topic. So 50 Cent had to step in and remind Jim about his personal history with Jay, and 50 did just that. He showed an old video of Jim at Roc Nation headquarters, appearing elated and exuberant. I am plagued by success. 50 also took the caption as an opportunity to boast about Jim, saying, I was asked if I had more enemies than friends, yes? Poor me, I replied after giving it some thought. It's funny.
If I told you I was in the Roc Nation office, how would you feel about that? Huh? You think I was lying? That's clear enough for you? Talk to me. Let me know your sentiments. You heard?
article will have a bigger impact. If you are familiar with the full history of Jim Jones and Jay-Z's relationship, even though you might believe he is being petty, as you can see, Jim disparaged Jay-Z for 13 years using public comments, diss tapes, and even street fights. However, he went all out and begged Jay's consent when the time was right. And that's the primary goal. Jim's recent CD, which is re-emphasizing his entire shady past, is the kind of move that will backfire spectacularly. But hold on, after slapping one of Jay's executives and dicing Jay, how could Jim beg Jay to sign him? Let's travel through time. It all started in 2000 when Cameron and Jim Jones were invited to Rockefeller by Dame Dash. Jim claims that Cam was even offered a vice president position at Roc. However, Jay chose not to disclose this to the public. I'm not even sure if I'll accept the part just yet, Cam told the source later that year. We're still talking about it, Dame. But I mean, I can have it, I own it, as you can see. Jay gave his approval and let the source know that it hasn't been implemented yet, I think. The conversation is a little premature at this moment. As a result, the tension existed right away. The song Oh Boy by Cameron and Jules Santana was later remixed by Jay, who added a verse that was a swipe at Nas, Jim and Cam, however, refused to release the remix, and Cam decided to cut out Jay's part, later declaring that he would not permit Jay to use their song to make amends.
Did a little something for you in the studio. Then he had something to Oh Boy.
This is Oh Boy's already #1?
Yeah, it's popping.
This, I
listened to it and I was like, erase that.
And that marked a sea change. Jim and Cam thought Jay didn't care about them. This marked the start of the sneak peek period. In interviews and radio appearances, Jim started disparaging Jay more regularly, characterizing him as corporate, soft, and disconnected from the street.
First of all, let's get right to it. There seems to be some drama. You and the Roc, Jay-Z, you try to diss. You did diss him. I diss nobody. You dissed him.
I diss Michael Jordan.
Oh man, we just there's no drama, man. No, we're gonna get to that. Shout out to Dame Dash, who started Rockefeller Records. If y'all don't know, he's responsible for Rockefeller getting off the floor. That started in Harlem. You know what I'm talking about?
Jim wanted to make it clear that Dipset's movement was raw, showy, and confrontational. Jim took advantage of the fact that Jay was more formal and business-minded by claiming that the streets had abandoned.
I'm on there, Jones. Burning the streets up, y'all know what it is, man. Purple Haze coming out, my dude Cam album coming out. Joel Santana, he's slated for September. You know what they call me, Geronimo Pratt. Dipset, the new Black Panther. No problems. I promise you.
Now, Jay first took a while to respond, but the battle within Rockefeller was known to all. Jim's album We Fly High was released in 2006. As a result of the song's viral success, Ballin gained popularity. Jim produced a solo hit. At that moment, Jay-Z realized he had to respond. Jim released a remix of Brooklyn High. His original track, however, that was not a tribute. The individual was a manner. Bars and ad-libs were ridiculed by Jay. It was surgical, cold, and contemptuous. But Jim turned the tables again and retaliated with the beef mix, calling Jay old, weak, and out of touch. But at this point, the struggle began to seep into the real world, and things became quite crazy. In 2008, Jim was captured on security footage molesting someone in a Louis Vuitton store. It was then found that the victim was Jay-Z's longtime A&R, Lenny Santiago. Jim was arrested for this and pleaded guilty to petty assault.
Jim Jones, the rapper, is going down. Jim Jones. Jim Jones.
Despite Jay's outward silence over the incident, the message was clear in private. The problem was no longer a rap dispute. It was personal. In an interview with XXL a few months later, Jay discussed the state of rap music today. Additionally, he ridiculed Jim by asserting that songs like Na 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 by Jim are to blame for the cultural decline. Jay said, I mean, like Jim Jones, for example. But I don't mean this because we're never in accord. Na 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 was invented By him. Why is the smiley face of Soulja Boy and Trey Songz different from other faces that might have been called smiley face? Jay's shots were now deliberate. He may not have been homeless, but he was still able to mock Jim without getting his hands filthy. But after this, the feud turned into a Cold War between 2010 and 2015. There were no confrontations or diss recordings, just a silenced reign. However, Dipset freestyles over Diddy's winning track in 2015. Jim and Cam both ridicule Jay and Roc Nation, calling the label industry puppets, ridiculing the brunch movement as a whole, and even bringing up Beyonce. Having money doesn't make you a real one, Cam stated. You strolled along the court. Are you going to play my game? Just say my name, like Shotty said. In this way, they were trying to incite beef. Jay-Z was a billionaire by then, you see, along with collecting art, launching his own streaming service, and entering the sports management industry. He's married to Beyonce. In other words, he didn't care that Jim and Cam were still yelling from the sidelines. In fact, Jay made reference to this in a recently uncovered film, saying that Jim is like the 8th player on the bench shouting at the MVP, and comparing himself to Michael Jordan.
Jim Jones, man.
Hip-hop, of course, you know, is a competitive sport. But on the other end of it, it's like certain people shouldn't be able to say your names until they've done something in the genre of music. I've done too much in this music to even have to answer that question. Like Jim Jones, who is Jim Jones? Like, he's not on anyone's top 10 list. He's not no one's top 10 list, maybe not even his family. I was saying last night, it's like the 8th guy on the bench just screaming at Jordan, like, you a bum. Like, you want to be like the 9th guy on the bench. I'm not even worried about it.
And realized now that he was just making Jay appear stupid by trying to make fun of him. Furthermore, 50 Cent is currently ridiculing him for precisely what he did after that. Jim had a change of heart and started begging Jay to sign him. Ultimately, Jim agreed to a deal with Roc Nation in February 2017. After 13 years of antagonism, he too officially joined
Jay's longtime nemesis turned collaborator Fat Joe signed to Rockefeller, and now it looks like another former rival who was relying on Ho's team to steer his career. As Dip says, Jim Jones is allegedly heading over to Roc Nation. Capo posted a picture of bottles of Douce and Ace of Spades next to a Roc Nation letterhead on IG and told fans to caption this.
He also didn't just sign in silence. He started bragging that Jay had invited him to his brunch at Roc Nation. It was the same one he used to mock. He began praising Jay in public, and all he was doing was trying to be loyal to Jay. The same man who used to hit his partner, accuse him of betraying the streets, and ridicule him for being soft, said that Jay was always his role model. Jay, though, said nothing again. Jim was not publicly congratulated when he joined Roc Nation. No opening statements, in fact. There was just one photo of Jim and Jay together after Jim signed with Roc Nation. Even in this picture, Jay looks like he would rather be somewhere else. Jay made it clear that they were not and would never be on an equal footing. When Jim finally took a seat at the table, Jim was simply another name in the Roc Nation folder, which is somewhat humorous considering part of the reason Jim became famous for over a decade, from 2000 to 2017, was a statement that he wasn't Jay-Z. He presented Dipset as the opposite of Roc Nation and the street-level counterpart of Jay's business persona, but in the end, the money won out, and the reputation that Jim had built over a decade crumbled when he needed a deal. Jay-Z didn't need to ridicule him. He was not required to respond. He just waited. When Jim finally bowed, Jay took the meeting, signed the contract, and went on. And the statement made by 50 Cent is just that. Jim was the one begging for a seat at the table after years of demeaning Jay. Now, most people would probably have forgotten about this if Jim hadn't made the mistake of ignoring Nas's history. But when he did, Jim gave people like 50 the opportunity to go further and expose Jim's long history of wavering and pretending loyalty. Furthermore, the receipts are excessively heavy. How far will this fallout spread is the question now. Will Jim's career be restored once the damage has been done?